Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well. I have a small request for you. Many of you watch our videos but haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Please subscribe, like, and share our content. Your support really motivates us to keep creating more videos. Thank you. I remember that night like it just happened yesterday, mostly because I still can't explain what really happened, or why it felt like someone else was there with me. It was a quiet shift. Too quiet, honestly. I was working the late shift at a small office building on the edge of town. Not a big place, just 3 floors, mostly empty after 6 p.m. My job was simple. Sit at the front desk, watch the cameras, and make sure no one came in who wasn't supposed to. By 11:30 p.m., the building was completely empty. I had already done my rounds. Every office was locked, lights were off, and even the parking lot outside was dark. It was the kind of silence that starts to feel heavy after a while, like it's pressing against your ears. I was halfway through a cup of cold coffee when I noticed something on the security monitor. One of the hallway lights on the 2nd floor was on. I remember freezing for a second, just staring at the screen. I had checked that exact hallway less than an hour ago. I turned those lights off myself. I was sure of it. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe I missed it. Maybe someone from cleaning came in and forgot to sign the log. Stuff like that happens, right? But then I checked the entrance camera. No one had come in. Not a single person. That's when I felt it, that small, uncomfortable feeling in my chest. The kind that doesn't make sense yet, but your body reacts anyway. Like something is wrong, and you just haven't caught up to it. I kept watching the screen, hoping I'd see someone walk into frame. Give me a normal explanation. But the hallway stayed empty. The light just stayed on. After a minute or two, I grabbed my keys and told myself I was overthinking it. It was probably nothing. Just a mistake. I couldn't just sit there all night staring at a light. So I got up and headed toward the stairs. And I remember this part clearly, because it's when the silence changed. It didn't get louder. It got different, like I wasn't alone anymore. The stairwell felt colder than usual. Not the normal kind of cold you get in empty buildings, but something sharper, like the air hadn't been touched in a while. I remember holding the railing tighter than I needed to, listening to my own footsteps echo too loudly against the walls. When I reached the 2nd floor, the hallway light was still on. It stretched across the carpet in a long, pale strip, making everything else look darker than it should have been. The offices on both sides were shut, exactly how I left them. Nothing looked out of place, but something felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. I stepped out slowly and looked around. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding smaller than I expected. No answer. I took a few steps forward, my shoes sinking slightly into the carpet, and that's when I noticed one of the office doors. It was open. Not wide open, just slightly. Maybe an inch or 2. But I knew for a fact I had closed every single door during my round. I always double-check. It's part of the routine. I stopped right there, staring at that gap. There was no light coming from inside the room. Just darkness. I don't know why, but I walked toward it anyway. Slowly. Like something was pulling me, even though every part of me was telling me to go back downstairs. As I got closer, I felt this strange pressure in my chest again. My breathing got shallow, and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I reached the door and pushed it open. The room was empty. Chairs tucked in. Desk clean. Window shut. Nothing moved. Nothing out of place. But the smell hit me immediately. It wasn't strong, just faint. Like someone had been there recently. Not perfume, not anything clear, just that subtle, human presence that lingers after someone leaves a room. I stood there for a few seconds, trying to make sense of it. Then I heard something behind me. A soft click. I turned around fast, my stomach dropping. The hallway light had turned off. Just like that, the entire floor went dark. For a second, I couldn't move. My eyes struggled to adjust, and everything turned into shadows and shapes. The only light now was the faint glow coming from the exit sign at the end of the hallway. And that's when I realized something that made my skin crawl. I hadn't heard anyone walk past me. No footsteps. No doors opening. Nothing. But someone or something had just turned off that light. I stepped out of the office slowly, my hand still on the door, and squinted into the darkness. That's when I saw it. Not clearly, just a shape. At the far end of the hallway. Standing near the exit sign. I knew it was facing me. Didn't move. I tried to tell myself it was just my eyes playing tricks, that maybe it was a chair or some shadow lined up perfectly. But then it shifted. Just slightly. And in that moment, I felt it, That deep, sinking realization that someone else was on this floor with me, watching me. I didn't wait to figure out what it was. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I turned and started walking fast in the opposite direction, trying not to panic, trying to stay quiet, but I could feel it behind me. Not hearing footsteps, not seeing movement, just knowing it was there. Halfway down the hallway, I heard it. A footstep. Soft but real. Not an echo. Not the building settling. Someone walking. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I picked up my pace, my keys shaking in my hand, the metal clinking louder than it should have. I didn't want to run, but every instinct was screaming at me to get out. Another step behind me. Closer this time. I turned my head just a little, just enough to see over my shoulder. The shape was moving now. Still not clear, still hidden in the dark, but it was coming toward me. Slow. Controlled. Like it wasn't in a hurry, like it already knew I wasn't going anywhere. I broke into a run. My shoes hit the carpet hard as I rushed toward the stairwell door, my hand reaching out before I even got there. I grabbed the handle and pulled. Locked. My heart dropped. No, 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 I muttered, pulling it again harder like that would change anything. I knew that door. It never locked from this side. Never. Another footstep. Right behind me now. I could feel it. I turned around, my back pressed against the door, and for the first time, I saw the face. Not clearly. Not fully. But enough. It was someone I recognized. One of the maintenance guys. I'd seen him before during day shifts. Quiet, always avoided eye contact. I didn't even know his name. But his expression, it wasn't normal. He wasn't angry. He wasn't rushed. He just looked calm. Too calm. Like this had already been decided. You weren't supposed to come up here, he said softly. My stomach twisted. The light, someone turned it on, I said, my voice shaking. I know, he replied. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't random. He wanted me to come up here. Before I could say anything else, he stepped closer, and I realized something that made everything worse. He had my spare keys in his hand, the ones that never leave the desk downstairs, which meant he had already been there, watching me, waiting. I don't remember making the decision to move. I just did. The second I saw those keys in his hand, something inside me snapped. I shoved myself sideways, scraping my shoulder hard against the wall, and ran past him. For a split second, he didn't react, like he didn't expect me to fight back. Then I heard him turn. I didn't look back again. I ran straight down the hallway, my vision blurring, my chest burning, heading for the emergency exit at the far end. My hands were shaking so badly I almost missed the push bar, but when I hit it, the alarm exploded through the silence. That sound saved me. It forced everything into the open. I stumbled outside into the cold air, nearly falling on the concrete, and kept moving until I reached the parking lot. I turned around then, finally, expecting him to be right behind me. But he wasn't. The door swung shut slowly, the alarm still screaming, but there was no sign of him. I called the police with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I could barely explain what happened. My words came out broken, like my brain couldn't keep up with everything I had just seen. They found him inside, still on the second floor. He didn't run, didn't resist, just stood there like nothing had happened. Later, they told me he had been coming in after hours for weeks, using copied keys, staying hidden, watching. No one could explain how he got mine that night, but I already knew. He didn't steal them randomly. He took them while I was there, distracted, thinking I was alone. I stopped working nights after that. Actually, I stopped working there completely. They offered me a few days off, told me everything was handled, that he was in custody and I was safe. But those words didn't mean anything to me anymore. Because the part that stayed with me wasn't what he did. It was how long he had been there without me knowing. I still think about all those quiet nights before it happened. All the times I sat at that desk, scrolling on my phone, drinking coffee, completely relaxed, thinking I was alone. But I wasn't. He had been somewhere in that building, watching me through those same cameras, learning my routine, waiting for the right moment. Sometimes I replay it in my head and wonder how close he got before I noticed anything was wrong. If he stood behind me at some point, just out of sight. If he ever came down to the front desk while I wasn't paying attention. That's the part that doesn't leave you. Not the running. Not the fear. It's the idea that someone could be that close to you for that long, and you wouldn't know until it was already too late. And even now, when I'm alone somewhere quiet, I catch myself looking over my shoulder for no reason. Because I learned something that night that I can't unlearn. Sometimes you're not alone at work. You just haven't seen them yet. I remember the smell before anything else, that strange mix of cleaning chemicals and something warmer, like someone had just been there seconds ago. It was past midnight, and I was working alone at a small convenience store just off a highway. The kind of place where you get maybe 1 or 2 customers an hour after 11 p.m. Most nights were slow, boring even. That's why I took the job. I thought quiet meant safe. That night felt normal at first. The neon lights outside buzzed softly, flickering every few seconds. The road was empty. Inside, the fridge motors hummed in the background, and the security camera screen above the counter showed all the usual angles: aisles, entrance, back storage door. Everything looked fine, but I remember checking the time and realizing something felt off. I hadn't seen a single car pass in almost 40 minutes. Not one. It wasn't completely unusual, but it felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. The kind of silence that doesn't feel natural, like the world outside just paused. I tried to ignore it. I even turned the radio on just to break the silence, but the signal kept cutting in and out, like it couldn't hold a steady connection. That's when the door sensor chimed. I looked up immediately. No one was there. The glass door was still closed, unmoving. I stared at it for a few seconds, waiting, expecting someone to pull it open, maybe just delayed or standing outside. But nothing happened. I checked the camera pointed at the entrance. Empty. I told myself it was probably a glitch. Old system, cheap sensors, things go off for no reason sometimes. Still, I felt that same tightness in my chest again. I stood up and walked around the counter, heading toward the door. Every step felt louder than it should have, like the store was amplifying the sound just to remind me how alone I was. When I reached the entrance, I checked the lock. Still secured. I even opened it and looked outside. The parking lot was completely empty. No cars. No headlights in the distance. Just darkness stretching out to the road. I stepped back inside slowly and locked the door again. That's when I heard something behind me. A soft dragging sound, like something moving across the floor. I froze. It came from one of the aisles. I turned my head slowly, my heart already starting to race. The store looked exactly the same. Nothing was out of place, but I knew what I heard. And then just for a second, I saw something on the security screen. A figure standing in one of the aisles, right where I had just heard the noise. I turned to look directly at that aisle. It was empty. When I looked back at the screen, the figure was gone. And that's when I realized something that made my hands go cold. Whatever was in the store with me, I wasn't staying in one place. I told myself it had to be a delay. The cameras were old, the system lagged sometimes. Maybe what I saw already happened a few seconds earlier, and I just missed it in real time. That made sense, that had to. But my body didn't believe it. I stayed behind the counter for a while, staring at the screen, waiting for that figure to show up again. Every aisle looked normal. Chips, drinks, candy. Everything exactly where it should be. Too normal. After a minute or two, I grabbed the small flashlight we kept under the register. I don't even know why. The lights were working fine, but holding something in my hand made me feel a little less exposed. I stepped out slowly, moving toward the aisle where I thought I saw the figure. Each step felt heavier than the last. The hum of the fridge behind me faded, replaced by this quiet pressure in my ears. I could hear my own breathing again, shallow, uneven. When I reached the aisle, I stopped. Nothing. I moved the flashlight slightly, letting the beam slide across the shelves. Everything was still. But then I noticed something small, something that shouldn't have been there. One of the snack bags had fallen onto the floor. It wasn't ripped. It wasn't open. Just placed there like someone had set it down carefully. I stared at it, trying to remember if it had been there before. I was almost sure it hadn't. And then I heard it again. That same dragging sound. This time closer. From the next aisle over. I turned my head fast, the flashlight shaking in my hand, and stepped back without even thinking. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely steady. The store's closed. But not empty silence. No answer. The kind silence. That feels like someone is listening. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the aisles, and returned to the counter. My hands were sweating now, slipping slightly against the flashlight. I glanced at the security screen again. And that's when my stomach dropped. The camera for the back storage room. The one with the metal door. It was open. I hadn't opened it. I hadn't even gone near it all night. I stared at the screen, trying to process it. Then slowly, something moved inside that room. Not fully stepping out. Just enough to block part of the light. A shadow. Standing just behind the door. Not coming out. Just waiting there. And somehow I knew. It knew I was watching it. I couldn't stay there anymore. Every second I stood behind that counter, staring at that half-open storage door on the screen. It felt like I was giving it time, like whatever was inside was deciding something. I reached for the phone to call my manager, but before I could dial, the line was already dead. No dial tone. No sound. Just silence. My chest tightened again. That kind of silence shouldn't happen. Not suddenly. I hung it up and grabbed my own phone. No signal. I remember whispering no, under my breath, like saying it out loud might fix something. But it didn't. And then the back door on the screen moved. Not fully opening. Just a slow shift, like someone gently pushed it a little wider. I felt my legs go weak. That was enough. I stepped out from behind the counter, heading straight for the front door, not even trying to be quiet anymore. I just needed to get out. Halfway there, the dragging sound came back. Louder now. Not from the aisles. From behind me. From the direction of the counter. I stopped without meaning to. My body just froze. And then I heard something that made my stomach drop completely. Breathing. Not mine. Slow, uneven, right behind the counter where I had been standing seconds ago. I turned slowly. The counter blocked most of the view, but I could see just enough. A hand, resting on the edge. Dirty. Still fingers slightly curled like it had just pulled itself up. I stumbled backward, my mind going blank. I didn't even think. I just ran for the door and shoved it open as hard as I could. The cold air hit me instantly, and I didn't stop. I kept running across the empty parking lot, my shoes slamming against the ground, expecting at any second to hear footsteps chasing me. But nothing came. I reached the edge of the road and turned back. The store lights were still on. The door I left open slowly swung back into place. And inside, I could see movement. Not fast. Not chasing me. Just shifting. Like it never planned to follow. Like it only wanted me inside. The police found someone in the storage room later that night. A man who wasn't supposed to be there. Someone who used to work there months ago, fired after a complaint no one really took seriously. They said he had been hiding in the store after closing for days, maybe longer. No one noticed anything missing. No one noticed him at all. But what still keeps me awake sometimes isn't just that he was there. It's that moment when I heard him breathing behind the counter. Because that means he was already out of the storage room before I even tried to leave. Which means, at some point during that night, he was standing right behind me. And I didn't even know it. I never went back to that store after that night. They asked me to come in and give a full statement, maybe even return to work once things settled down. But nothing about it felt settled to me. The place didn't feel like a job anymore. It felt like a trap I barely got out of. They told me his name. Show me a picture. The same guy. The same face I caught for a split second in the reflection of the fridge door when I was running. At the time, I thought my mind was just breaking from the fear, filling in details that weren't there. But it was real. They said he used to work the night shift before me. Quiet, kept to himself. Then one of the employees reported feeling uncomfortable around him. Said he would stand too close, watch too long, show up in places without making a sound. Nothing was proven, so they just let him go. That was it. No report. No warning to the rest of us. I keep thinking about that part, because if someone had taken it seriously, maybe I wouldn't have been there alone that night. What stays with me isn't just what happened. It's how normal everything looked while it was happening. The lights, the aisles, the cameras, all of it felt safe on the surface. But it wasn't. And now, whenever I walk into a small store late at night, I don't feel comforted by the quiet anymore. I watch the corners. I check the reflections. I listen for things that don't sound right. Because sometimes, the danger isn't loud. It doesn't break in. It doesn't chase you. Sometimes, it's already inside, waiting for you to believe you're alone. I still catch myself thinking about the parts that don't add up. Like the camera. The one that showed a figure in the aisle before I ever walked over there. The police told me the system had a slight delay, maybe even a glitch. Said it could have been recorded earlier and just replayed at the wrong time. But that doesn't explain how it moved. Or how it disappeared right when I looked back. And it definitely doesn't explain the door sensor. They checked it later and said it was working fine. No faults. No errors logged that night. Which means that chime I heard at the beginning, something triggered it, even though no one came through the front door. Sometimes I sit with that thought longer than I should. Because there's only two possibilities. Either he was already inside before my shift even started. Or, there was another way that no one ever found. They never gave me a clear answer. Just small explanations that didn't fully connect, like they wanted everything to sound normal again. But it never did. Even now, months later, I can't stand being in places where I can't see every exit. I hate mirrors, especially the ones behind counters or in corners, the kind that show you things you're not directly looking at. Because that's how I saw him. Not face to face. Not clearly. Just a reflection, a shape that didn't belong. And sometimes late at night, when everything around me is quiet and still, I remember that breathing. Slow. Patient. Right behind me. And I start to wonder something I wish I could forget. If I hadn't turned around, if I hadn't run, how long would he have just stood there, watching me that close, without me ever knowing he was there at all? I remember the hum of the vending machines first. That low, constant vibration you barely notice until it stops. Then it feels wrong, like the building itself is holding its breath. I was working alone at a small hospital after hours, mostly just monitoring supplies in the storage wing. The night shift is always quiet, and that night felt quieter than usual. The hallway lights flickered occasionally, casting long, stretching shadows that made every corner look like it could hide something. I had just finished checking the supply rooms on the west wing when I heard it, a faint tapping. At first, I thought it was the pipes, or maybe a loose window rattling in the draft. But the sound was rhythmic, deliberate. Someone was moving in the hall, and I was sure I was alone. I froze for a moment, gripping my clipboard tighter. My boots squeaked against the polished floor as I turned slowly, scanning the empty hallway. Nothing. Just the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, flicker flash, flicker flash. I shook my head and told myself I was imagining it. Hospitals are full of strange noises. Machines, pipes, even the janitorial carts make shadows that play tricks on you. But even as I told myself that, I felt it. That prickling sensation on the back of my neck. The kind you get when you know someone is watching, but you can't see them. I took a step forward, trying to ignore it, but that's when I noticed the supply closet door at the end of the hallway. It was slightly ajar. I remember checking it earlier, making sure all the doors were locked. Always locked. And now there it was. Open. Just a crack, but enough to make me stop in my tracks. The tapping started again, louder this time. Not from the pipes. Not from the ceiling. From inside the closet. I swallowed hard and slowly edged closer, each step heavier than the last, until I was right in front of it. My hand hovered over the handle. And then I realized something that made my stomach twist like a knot. The closet wasn't supposed to be open. I took a deep breath and pulled the closet door open just a few inches. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, but there was nothing inside. Just shelves stacked with bandages, boxes of gloves, and old cleaning supplies. My hand lingered on the door handle, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might shake the door right off its hinges. Then I heard it again, a soft, dragging sound. This time, it wasn't coming from inside the closet. It was behind me. My first instinct was to spin around, but my body froze. The hallway was empty. Just the humming fluorescent lights and the occasional flicker of shadow on the walls. I swallowed hard and tried to convince myself it was nothing. Hospitals are old. Sounds echo. Doors creak. Pipes shift. But my gut told me it wasn't nothing. I stepped out into the hallway slowly, flashlight sweeping from side to side. Every corner seemed to stretch farther than it should. And that's when I noticed it. The small window in the supply closet door wasn't reflecting just my light. Something moved behind the glass, just a shadow. I couldn't see a face, just a vague, shifting shape that seemed too deliberate to be a trick of the light. I told myself to calm down. Maybe it was a janitor who forgot something. But then I remembered the night logs. I was the only one on duty. No janitor, no security, no doctors, no staff. Just me. I backed away slowly, my flashlight trembling. The dragging sound started again, closer this time, coming from the end of the hallway. I turned toward it, trying to see what it was, but the hallway was empty. Still, I could feel it, someone or something moving toward me. I made my way back toward the main nurse's station, trying to stay calm. My steps echoed unnaturally loud against the linoleum. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The camera feed on the monitor above the desk showed the supply closet door swinging shut, all on its own. I froze, staring at the screen. The dragging sound stopped. Silence. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That whatever had been inside that closet wasn't just moving. It was waiting, calculating, letting me see just enough to know it was there. I checked the stairwell doors and the main exits. Everything was locked. I was trapped in the quietest, most isolated part of the hospital with something, or someone, I couldn't see but I knew was close. And then the first whisper came. Not loud. Not a voice I could make out. Just a soft, deliberate breath, almost a hiss, right behind me. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. I hadn't been alone at all. The whisper made my blood freeze. I spun around, flashlight swinging wildly, but the hallway was empty. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it might give me away. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like they were glued to the floor. Then I heard it again, closer this time. A slow, deliberate step. Not running. Not panicking. Just coming toward me. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing, but it was impossible. My throat felt dry, my chest tight, and the fluorescent lights overhead flickered, throwing long, jagged shadows across the walls. I backed up toward the nurse's station, my flashlight catching the end of the hallway. A figure stood there, barely visible, blending with the darkness. I couldn't make out details, only the shape, but I knew it was watching me. Waiting. Calculating. "Who's there?" I demanded, voice shaking. No answer. Just silence. Then the dragging sound started again, right behind me. Slowly, deliberately inching closer. It was him. I turned, a man I recognized from day shifts months ago. A temp who'd been let go after complaints about acting strange. But now, standing in the shadow, his calmness was terrifying. His eyes were steady, cold, and unblinking. "You shouldn't have been here alone," he said softly. I froze. My mind scrambled. I thought you weren't supposed to be in this hospital." He took a step closer, slow, precise, like he had all the time in the world. My flashlight wavered in my hand, casting jittery shadows across his face. And then I realized something worse. The keys I kept in my pocket, the ones to the supply rooms, were in his hand. He had them. He had been inside all along. Watching me. Waiting. Panic took over. I spun and bolted toward the main exit, hoping against hope it would open. It didn't. Locked. He moved closer, calm, deliberate, like he had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. The dragging sound behind me was louder now. He didn't run. Didn't chase. He just advanced, patient and terrifying. I slammed my shoulder against the fire exit, keys in hand, and the door gave way. I fell through it, scraping my hands and knees, but I kept running, never looking back. By the time I reached the parking lot, the hospital was silent again. The doors were shut behind me. But I knew he was still there somewhere, still watching, still waiting. I didn't stop running until the hospital was a distant shape behind me, swallowed by darkness. My hands were scraped, shaking, and my heart felt like it would burst from my chest. I called the police as soon as I reached the main road, but my voice kept breaking, words tumbling out faster than I could control. They arrived quickly, flashing lights cutting through the night, and I led them back to the hospital. Every hallway looked the same, silent, ordinary, like nothing had happened. But I knew better. I knew what I had felt. I knew what I had seen. They found him in one of the supply rooms, crouched behind the shelves, holding my keys in his hand. No resistance. No explanation. Just calm. Patient. Like it had all been a game, and I had lost. The officers told me he had been sneaking into the hospital after hours for weeks, using copied keys and hiding in storage rooms. They said he hadn't harmed anyone before, and I should be grateful that nothing worse happened. But being grateful didn't help the way my stomach still tightened every time I thought about those footsteps behind me, the whisper, the slow, deliberate dragging sound. It didn't erase the feeling of being watched, not knowing where he might have been before I ever realized he was there. Even now, I flinch at small noises at night. I checked the locks twice, 3 times. I can't stop thinking about how close he was and how little time I had to escape. Because some people, some threats, aren't obvious. They wait, patient and unseen, until the exact moment you realize you're not as safe as you thought. I never went back to that hospital wing after that night. Even during the day, when staff were around, I avoided it. The place didn't feel like a workplace anymore. It felt like a trap I had barely escaped. People told me I was lucky, that nothing happened, that I could have been hurt or worse. But luck didn't explain the weeks he had spent inside, hiding, watching, knowing my routine better than I did. That's the part that haunts me the most. The idea that someone could be that close for so long, and I never even noticed. Sometimes I replay that night in my mind. The fluorescent lights flickering, the dragging sound behind me, the whisper I could barely hear. The way he held my keys like he owned them, like he had planned everything down to the smallest detail. I try to make sense of it, to understand why he didn't act sooner, why he chose that night. But the truth is, I probably don't want to know. Now, whenever I'm alone in a quiet building, I check the corners, the reflections, the shadows. Every noise sets my nerves on edge. Every creak makes me jump. I know now that silence isn't always safe. The worst part is knowing that some people don't need to be seen to control the room. They just wait. They watch. And if you aren't careful, you might realize too late that you were never alone at all. Sometimes I still wonder, if I had turned around 1 second later, would I have noticed him at all? Or would he have been standing there, right behind me, and I would have never escaped? I remember the smell of coffee burning before I even realized something was wrong. It was just past 1 a.m., and I was alone at the office, making a quick cup at the small kitchenette in the corner. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly, flickering every few seconds, making the shadows in the room jump around. Everything had been quiet all night, too quiet. Usually, there was the occasional sound of a car outside or the faint hum of the elevator in the lobby. But that night, the whole building felt suspended, like it was holding its breath. I set the coffee mug down and leaned against the counter, rubbing my eyes. That's when I noticed it, the cleaning closet door at the end of the hallway, slightly open. I was almost certain I had closed it before the night shift started. Always checked it, always locked it. I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe a janitor left it ajar earlier. Maybe I hadn't looked carefully. But the moment I saw the gap, something in my chest tightened. That familiar prickling sensation ran down my spine. The kind that tells you, without any doubt, that you're not as alone as you think. I walked slowly toward the door, coffee still in hand, flashlight tucked in my pocket just in case. Each step made my shoes squeak against the tile louder than I expected. The hallway seemed longer than usual, stretching into shadows that shifted with every flicker of the overhead lights. When I reached the closet, I noticed the small office key on the floor in front of it. I always kept them on my desk. Always. Not one, not two, all of them. And now just lying there, as if someone had dropped them on purpose. Before I could even bend to pick them up, I heard it. A soft click from behind me. I froze. The door I had just passed, the main office door, was closing slowly, silently on its own. And that's when I realized I wasn't alone. I gripped the coffee mug, so hard my fingers burned. The warmth didn't help. My eyes darted around the kitchenette and the hallway, trying to convince myself it was just a draft or a faulty door closer. But something in the building felt wrong. Too deliberate. I stepped cautiously back toward the main office door. It was locked. I had locked it myself before starting my shift. Now it was shutting slowly, like someone was pushing it from the inside, or worse, letting it move on its own while waiting for me to notice. Then I heard it, a low scrape. Metal on tile. I froze again. My flashlight was in my pocket, but I didn't want to pull it out yet. I didn't want to give away my location. The sound came from the supply room at the end of the hallway. I remembered checking it earlier, locked. Always locked. Nothing had been moved. But the scraping, it was coming from inside. I moved closer, trying to stay as quiet as possible, heart hammering in my chest. Each step felt amplified, echoing off the walls. My hands were sweating, shaking slightly as I reached the supply room door. The closer I got, the more I could hear it, a slow, deliberate shifting, like someone moving boxes around carefully, trying not to make noise. I pulled my flashlight out, flicked it on, and shone it toward the door. It was closed but not latched. I could see a faint shadow through the small window. I held my breath. I called out softly, trying to sound calm. Hello? Is someone there? No answer. The shadow shifted slightly, then vanished. My stomach sank. Whoever, or whatever was inside, they were moving, following me. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like they were cemented to the floor. I backed away slowly, flashlight scanning the hallway. That's when I noticed it. The janitor's cart I had parked near the stairwell earlier was gone. I hadn't moved it. A chill ran down my spine. And then I heard it again, the soft, dragging sound. Closer this time, coming from the kitchenette. Not the supply room. Not the stairwell. Behind me. I spun, flashlight trembling, and caught a glimpse of something moving in the corner of the hallway. Dark, low to the ground, just a shape. I couldn't see a face. I couldn't see my hands. But I knew it was alive, faster than I expected, and I knew it was watching me. My flashlight beam shook wildly as I swung it toward the corner, but it vanished before I could see anything clearly. My chest tightened, my throat dry. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead. Then I heard it, a whisper. Soft, deliberate, coming from just behind me. Not words I could make out, just a sound meant to unsettle, and it did. I whipped around, a flashlight illuminating the hallway, but it was empty. Nothing there. Only the shadows stretching across the walls. Panic surged. I backed toward the kitchenette, my mind racing. The supply room door at the end of the hall swung open slightly on its own. I froze. My flashlight flickered as if it was warning me. My hands were trembling so badly, I nearly dropped it. Then I heard the dragging sound again. This time right behind me. Closer. Steady. Intentional. I turned slowly and saw him. A man I had seen only briefly during the day shifts months ago. A temp they had let go quietly after complaints from co-workers. He was standing there calm, watching me with eyes that didn't blink. Keyring in hand. My office keys. "You shouldn't be here alone," he said softly. His voice was low, precise. No anger. No hurry. Just certainty. I didn't think so. I bolted. Toward the main exit. Heart hammering, every step echoing in the empty building. He didn't chase me. He didn't need to. His calm presence behind me made it worse, like the hallway itself was trapping me. I slammed into the door, fumbling with the lock. It clicked open, and I pushed through, stumbling into the cold night air. My shoes scraped against the concrete as I didn't stop running until the hospital was a dark shape behind me. Even from outside, I could feel him inside, patient and deliberate. Watching. Waiting. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. My hands were scraped and shaking. My chest felt like it might explode, and my thoughts were a chaotic mess. I fumbled with my keys, finally getting the door open and slamming it shut behind me. I locked it immediately, breathing hard, heart pounding like it would burst. I called the police from my phone, barely able to speak. My words tumbled out in panic, and they told me to stay in my car until they arrived. When the squad cars came, flashing red and blue lights cutting through the darkness, I led them back to the building. Inside, the place looked normal. Empty. Silent. Too quiet. But the supply room door was open, and the janitor's cart was shifted slightly from its original spot. Officers found him hiding in a small storage area, keys in hand, calm as if he had rehearsed the entire night. He hadn't attacked anyone. Not yet. The police explained he had been sneaking in after hours for weeks, learning the building, watching, waiting. My co-workers were shocked, but I couldn't stop replaying the dragging sound, the whisper, the calm way he had held my keys as if he already owned the place. Even after that night, I couldn't shake it. Every creak, every flicker of light, every shadow in a quiet room makes my stomach tighten. I check locks obsessively, even when it's not necessary. I know now that being alone doesn't mean you're safe. Some people don't need to act fast to control a space. They wait. And sometimes you only realize too late that you were never alone at all. I never returned to that wing of the hospital alone. Even during day shifts, I avoid it whenever I can. The place doesn't feel like a hospital anymore. It feels like a trap I narrowly escaped. People told me I was lucky, that nothing happened, that I could have been seriously hurt or worse. But luck doesn't explain how long he had been inside, watching me, learning my routine, waiting for the exact moment to unsettle me. That's what haunts me most, the thought that he could have been anywhere, hiding, silent, and I would have never known. Sometimes I replay the night in my head, the flickering lights, the dragging sound, the whisper I barely heard, the calm certainty in his eyes when he held my keys. I try to understand why he didn't act sooner, why he chose that night, but maybe I don't want to know. Now I flinch at small noises at night. I check every corner, every reflection, every shadow. Even familiar places feel dangerous. I've learned that silence isn't always safe, and shadows aren't always empty. The worst part is realizing how close someone can be without you ever noticing. They don't need to run. They don't need to yell. They just wait, patient and unseen, until you finally notice, and by then, you're already in their world. Sometimes I still wonder, if I had stopped for just 1 second, would I have seen him standing there? Or would I have walked past, never realizing how close the danger had been all along?